Claire Morgan had always thrived in the pulsating heart of New York City. The chaos, the noise, the constant rush of people, it was all she had ever known. As a rising star at a high-profile law firm, her days were filled with endless cases, late nights, and a relentless drive to climb the corporate ladder. But on one crisp autumn afternoon, her life took an unexpected turn when she received a peculiar letter. The envelope was brittle and yellowed with age, devoid of any return address. Inside, a single piece of parchment bearing the seal of an estate she had never heard of, Blackwood Manor. The letter was from a lawyer named Jonathan Edwards, informing her that she had inherited the manor from a distant relative she never knew existed, a great uncle named William Blackwood. The letter was curt and mysterious. It included a key and a simple ominous instruction: come to Blackwood Manor and claim your inheritance. But be warned, not all is as it seems. Both intrigued and unnerved, Claire decided that a break from her chaotic life was in order. Perhaps the manor would offer the solitude and clarity she needed. Blackwood Manor was nestled deep in the remote woods of Vermont, far removed from the city's ceaseless energy. As she drove, the roads became increasingly desolate, winding through dense forests where the trees loomed like silent sentinels. The further she went, the more isolated she felt. The sky, once clear, became obscured by a thick canopy of branches that seemed to close in on her, and as she neared her destination, a dense fog began to blanket the landscape, swallowing everything in a ghostly shroud. The manor itself emerged from the mist like a forgotten relic of a bygone era. It was an imposing, decaying structure, with its once grand facade now weathered and covered in thick ivy. Many of the windows were boarded up, and the large, rusted iron gate at the entrance groaned in protest as Claire pushed it open, revealing a gravel driveway that crunched beneath her tires. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and rotting leaves, and an unsettling stillness hung over the place, broken only by the occasional mournful caw of a distant crow. As Claire approached the manor, a sense of unease washed over her. The heavy wooden door creaked ominously as she pushed it open, revealing a grand foyer bathed in dim flickering light from a single dusty chandelier. The air was thick with dust and the scent of old wood, and the silence was so profound it seemed to press down on her, amplifying every creak and groan of the ancient building. She began to explore, her footsteps echoing through the vast empty rooms. Each was filled with relics of a long-forgotten time, furniture draped in white sheets, cobwebs that hung like ghostly veils, and portraits of stern-faced ancestors whose eyes seemed to follow her as she moved. The further she ventured into the manor, the stronger the sensation that she was not alone. In one of the upstairs bedrooms, she discovered an old photograph album. The photos, faded and yellowed, depicted the Blackwood family through the years. But as she flipped through the pages, a disturbing pattern emerged. Each member's eyes had been meticulously scratched out. A cold shiver ran down her spine, and she quickly closed the album, her heart pounding in her chest. Despite her growing unease, Claire decided to stay the night. She chose a room that appeared to be in better condition than the others, but sleep was elusive. The wind outside howled like a chorus of lost souls, rattling the windows, and the house seemed to come alive with unsettling noises, the creaks and groans of wood, the soft patter of unseen footsteps, the distant, almost imperceptible whispers. Just as she was finally beginning to drift off, she was jolted awake by a soft, eerie whisper coming from the hallway. The sound was faint at first, like a distant breeze, but it grew steadily louder, more insistent. Her heart raced as she sat up, straining to make out the words. Gathering her courage, she tiptoed to the door and opened it a crack. The hallway was empty, but the whispers persisted, seeming to emanate from every shadow. Taking a deep breath, Claire stepped into the dark corridor. The air was colder here, and the whispers grew louder with each step she took, leading her inexorably toward the grand staircase at the end of the hall. The stairs creaked under her weight as she descended, the oppressive silence broken only by the soft, insidious whispers that surrounded her. The whispers led her to the cellar door, which stood slightly ajar, a sickly green light seeping through the crack. Every instinct told her to turn back, to flee, but something compelled her to push the door open and descend into the darkness below. The cellar was cold, damp, and filled with the musty scent of decay. The green light pulsed softly, casting eerie, flickering shadows on the stone walls. At the center of the room stood a large, circular stone altar, covered in ancient symbols that seemed to shift and writhe as she stared at them. On the altar lay an old, tattered book, bound in black leather that had cracked with age. The book was open, its pages filled with strange symbols and diagrams that seemed to twist and blur as she tried to focus on them. As she approached, the whispers grew louder, more urgent, now clearly emanating from the book itself. The words were incomprehensible, but they drilled into her mind, distorting her thoughts, filling her with a deep primal dread. Suddenly, the cellar door slammed shut with a deafening crash, plunging the room into darkness. The green light flared brightly before extinguishing completely, and the whispers ceased, leaving behind a suffocating silence. Claire's breath caught in her throat as a low, guttural growl rumbled from the shadows. Something ancient and malevolent was in the room with her. Panic surged through her as she backed away from the altar, her eyes straining to see in the pitch black. But it was too late. The creature lunged at her from the darkness, its eyes glowing with an unnatural light. She screamed as it grabbed her, its icy hands wrapping around her throat with a strength that defied reason. But just as she thought it was the end, the creature released her, disappearing back into the shadows as quickly as it had appeared. Gasping for breath, Claire scrambled up the stairs, her heart pounding in her chest. She flung the cellar door open and stumbled into the grand foyer, only to find it transformed. The chandelier above her was swinging wildly, as if caught in a violent storm, but the air was still, and the darkness seemed to press in on her from all sides. The manor was alive. The walls pulsed with a dark, malevolent energy, and the shadows twisted and writhed as if they had a life of their own. Claire could feel the house watching her, toying with her, and a terrible realization dawned on her. It had no intention of letting her leave. In a blind panic, she fled through the labyrinthine corridors, desperately searching for an exit. But every door she opened led to another dark, empty room, each more nightmarish than the last. The manor was a living maze, its layout shifting and changing, leading her deeper into its heart. At last, she stumbled into a large, ornate room lined with mirrors. The mirrors reflected her image back at her 1,000 times over, but as she looked closer, her heart froze. The reflections were not her own, they were the twisted, tormented faces of the Blackwood family, their eyes still scratched out, their mouths contorted in silent screams of agony. In the center of the room stood a large, gilded mirror, its frame adorned with intricate carvings of twisted vines and thorns. As Claire approached, something dark and shadowy began to move within the glass. A figure, shrouded in darkness, its eyes glowing with that sickly green light, reached out toward her, its hand passing through the glass as if it were water. Terror rooted her to the spot as the figure's icy hand grasped her wrist, pulling her toward the mirror. She struggled, but her feet refused to move, and the mirror's surface rippled like liquid as it swallowed her whole, plunging her into an abyss of darkness. On the other side, she found herself in a twisted, nightmarish version of the manor. The walls were blackened and charred, the air thick with the stench of decay and rot. The whispers were louder here, an almost deafening cacophony of tormented voices, and the air was thick with the presence of vengeful spirits that pressed down on her like a suffocating weight. The figure that had pulled her through the mirror was gone, but its presence lingered, a malevolent force that watched her from the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. Claire knew she had entered the very heart of the manor's curse, and there was no way out. As she wandered through the twisted, decaying corridors, she began to piece together the horrifying truth. The Blackwood family had delved into dark, forbidden rituals in their quest for power and immortality, but their ambition had unleashed a force beyond their control, an ancient, malevolent entity that had consumed them all, trapping their souls within the manor's walls. Now, the manor fed on the souls of those who entered, using their fear and despair to fuel its dark power. Claire was just the latest in a long line of victims, drawn to the manor by the same malevolent force that had ensnared the Blackwood family. But Claire was not willing to surrender to the darkness. She knew that if she could find a way to break the curse, she might still have a chance to escape. The key, she realized, lay in the ancient book she had seen in the cellar. It held the secrets of the curse, the spell that had bound the souls to the manor. With renewed determination, Claire made her way back to the cellar, the whispers now urging her on, guiding her. She descended the stairs once more, ready to confront the horrors of Blackwood Manor and find a way to free herself from its malevolent grasp.